This is probably the very first one where it's light outside and it's not rainy and drab and grateful. out of how many of these, the fact that we even have a couple where there's some sunshine, I'm thankful for it. So yes, we've had quite the journey together. How many of you have been here for more than 2 longevity? Great. And for how many of you is this your very first time, have never shown up? Wonderful. Great. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming. So the formats of these are pretty clear. Normally I'll spend about 20 to 30 minutes talking and educating you and bringing you some science. And then we shut off the recordings and it becomes an open space for us to talk and ask questions and just be amongst this container. So it's a great opportunity and we still have a few more to go. March 19th is on gut health, metabolism, and the microbiome. And I'm bringing a very cool person. Her name is Dr. Tara Zinnemann. She's a neuroscientist. And when I approached her about wanting to join us, I said, hey, I would love for you to talk about the gut-brain connection and really pick her brain as a neuroscientist to really dive into it. We've done a few things collaboratively together, so you'll have the opportunity to ask her questions directly, and that will be next Wednesday. And then on March 26th, it wouldn't be a longevity series without talking about breath work. And so we're going to dive into the science of breathwork. I'm bringing in a breathwork specialist. Her name is Gwen Dittmar, and she's also going to walk us through a breathwork experience as part of that one. So it'll be a nice way for us to round up longevity learnings. Standard disclaimer for every single one of these. For some of you, I might be your medical doctor, and for those of you who are not my patients, make sure that this is something that you read. This is for informational purposes only. This is not to be misconstrued as medical advice directly. If we have questions at the end where we're talking about cases, we'll talk about them theoretically as well. So this is who I am. For some of you, this is very new. So I'm one of the lead physicians here at Love.Life. I practice a functional integrative medicine model. I'm board certified as a family doctor. Reason why is I really wanted to make sure I could see people throughout the spectrum of their life journey. And it's also a privilege to be able to care for families, meaning parents and their children and even grandparents. I specialize in hormones. I love talking about hormones, all different kinds, not just the sex hormones. And we had some fun lectures earlier on menopause, on hormone replacement therapy, on if this is right for me or do I even need this. So we've had some conversations about it. And for sure, we're going to dive deeper into hormones over the course of the year. I am also a young breast cancer survivor from my early 30s, so that really did change my perspective on how I take care of people and also how I take care of myself. So melatonin, vitamin D, and the sleep connection. I kind of slipped in a little gem by telling you how much I love hormones, and here we go, right? So this talk, you might not have thought that that's what it was going to be about, but this talk is actually about hormones. And both melatonin and vitamin D are hormones. Vitamin D is not a vitamin, not just a vitamin. And so we're going to dive into that today. So what is melatonin? It's interesting because whenever you put slides together, you want to focus on the simple, basic information so that people can take home the basics and kind of build their curiosity on top of that. Melatonin is a hormone that's produced by the pineal gland in the brain. And it's primarily produced there in response to darkness. Now, you can see that I said that it's produced by the pineal gland, but you're going to see that it's not just produced by the pineal gland in your brain. And I think that's a fact that most people aren't aware of. We always think it's just coming from here, but that's not true. We also know that melatonin is involved in a series of chemical reactions for every single body system and the entire interactions between all of those. So here's the true answer for where you're going to find melatonin. It's found in these 5 places. It's found in the brain, in the pineal gland. It's also found in the gut. Interestingly enough, it's produced in higher concentrations here in our digestive tract than in the brain, and people forget that. All of your cells also produce melatonin. Let me say it again. All of your cells also produce melatonin. And interestingly enough, the location where they produce it, inside the mitochondria, which was longevity learnings number 1, And it uses near-infrared light to produce that melatonin. We also know that there are dietary sources of melatonin, so we get it from food. So we get dietary sources of melatonin. We also know the gut is making it. We also know the brain is making it in the pineal gland. And then all of our cells are making it in the mitochondria. And then it's also made in the placenta. So for mamas, this isn't just for the baby. This is also melatonin that's produced by the placenta for moms. So this is really the true answer for where melatonin is made, and it's not just here where most people think about it. In this article, melatonin, both the messenger of darkness and a participant in the cellular actions of non-visible solar radiation. I pulled this picture because it makes it very clear. It's made in our mitochondria and all of our cells, and it's using near-infrared light to do that job. It's also made in the pineal gland deep in the brain. And in order to do this, this is based off of our circadian rhythm and how well light is received into our eyes during daylight and in darkness. We're also getting it from those dietary sources to help the gut make melatonin. And then here you can see the microbiome of your skin, mouth, nose, digestive tract, and vagina. At Longevity Fest in December, Dr. Deanna Minnick, she also mentioned that virtually every bodily fluid that we have in our bodies, including breast milk, also has melatonin. So it is literally everywhere, even though we always think about it just being here. And so that's an important concept for us to walk through together. In Dr. Deanna Minnick's lecture, she also talked about it. Brain, eyes, skin, liver, kidney, thyroid. And then here it kind of shows you from a study standpoint all of the different places, including that placenta, that often gets ignored for where melatonin is being made. I really loved the picture that she shared because it just shows you how we have these different clocks in the body. And there's a part that's deep in our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, a big word called the SCN. And deep in the brain, it's about the size of an almond. And this is our 24-hour rhythm generator for the body, but it's almost like a radar to all of these different places. And as your body functions on a daily basis, each of these body functions takes place at a different time. So there are times to our organ systems and how our organs are meant to function that is all based off of what happens at the level of the brain. And so here's why it's important. Not only does it regulate our sleep-wake cycles, we know that it supports our immune system and it's used in cancer prevention. Early on in my cancer journey, I was shocked when they were saying, hey, we want you to start taking melatonin in high doses. And then of course I'm like, okay, tell me how high are you thinking? Well, why don't you start with 20 milligrams? And you're like, wow, did I really need to start and take 20 milligrams of melatonin? When you do digging and you do research, you realize that there are therapeutic regimens where people do take really high amounts. And for somebody who was going through active cancer treatment, might be helpful because we know how much it supports the immune system. We know how much it regulates your circadian rhythm, help your metabolic health, help your antioxidant status, help to support your mood and mental health, and even the gut. So I thought that was interesting, and there are even preparations that have that much. But again, that's not for everybody. And the purpose of this is to educate you on the hormone itself, not necessarily that everybody needs to be taking melatonin, because I don't think that is necessarily a true statement. So here's how your body makes it. The pineal gland we talked about already produces melatonin in response to darkness. Now, the reason why this is important is because as you age, the pineal gland deep in the brain, it starts to calcify. And so when the pineal gland starts to calcify with aging, as people get older, they don't get as great of an effect from pineal melatonin, which means your body needs to rely on all of those other ways that you get melatonin, meaning all of your cells, meaning using near-infrared light. Even some of the modalities and the recovery modalities we have at Love.Life are actually targeting this exact fact. So that's an important consideration, that as we age, the brain melatonin that you're trying to create is going to go down in scope. And we have to get melatonin through other ways, not just from that. We also know that this is the way it's made, especially in the digestive tract. It's made from an amino acid called tryptophan. Tryptophan then converts into serotonin. And you'll often hear that serotonin is a hormone of bliss, of joy, of positivity, but serotonin then turns into melatonin through these processes, and some of that is happening right here in the digestive tract. So I think the higher percentage of serotonin is not produced in the brain for that bliss and that joy and creativity and happiness. It's actually produced in the gut. And the gut then communicates those signals to the brain to then make melatonin. And remember I said one of the places that we get melatonin is foods. And this is an interesting list because I bet most people here might not have known that all of these different types of foods, fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds and grains, beans, certain types of oils even have it. Coffee has some melatonin. And so this is just a nice rundown to give you so that you know that of the 5 places, one of the ways that we actually get it is through how we nourish our bodies. I dive deep into melatonin and explain it in this article for The Good Trade. This is a QR code in case you're interested in really diving even further into melatonin. And I think this is the most important statement from everything that I said was, as the melatonin levels decrease as you age, all the more reason for us to not just think about the brain melatonin, but think about all of those other ways that we can continue to get it. So I'm going to switch gears. We're going to talk about vitamin D. There's a reason why both melatonin and vitamin D are paired in this discussion. So I said earlier that vitamin D is not just a vitamin, that it's a hormone, and that vitamin D is important in circadian rhythm and calcium balance and immune system and bone health. It's fat soluble. So sometimes when people are taking vitamin D, providers will recommend that they also take it with omega-3s because that is a healthy fat, helps with the absorption. And we always hear about it being called the sunshine vitamin because it's produced by our skin. And so here's the places where we find it. This is the primary source. And then we're finding it in small amounts in foods. And then we also find it in supplements. And interestingly enough, you'll see D2 and D3 on the market. D3 is the more active form of vitamin D. And it's also, vitamin D is typically sourced through sheep's wool. So some people who are vegetarian and vegan, they might prefer an alternative to the traditional vitamin D that you see that's available. And so here's how the body makes vitamin D. When your skin is exposed to UVB rays from sunlight, it triggers that production. Now, UVB rays are not available to us all time of day. The best time to get these UVB rays from sunlight is actually when the sun is at high noon in the sky, especially here in Los Angeles. So when you wake up in the morning and you go outside to support your circadian rhythm to help stimulate that cortisol rise, you are not getting vitamin D. Okay? In order to get vitamin D, you typically need sun highest in the sky, usually between 10 and 2 p.m. Again, it depends on your geographic location, but here in LA, that's pretty standard. And that is the time when you can actually get vitamin D from sunlight. Okay? So there's reasons why we want to expose our body to the different types of wavelengths of light that we get between sunrise, middle of the day, and sunset. The UVB that you need in order to get that natural vitamin D production is going to be that daytime walk outside in the middle of the day. And here's where you can get it. Fatty fish, egg yolks, you can see that it's fortified in certain things. Mushrooms, cereals, cheese, and liver. Whenever I go to the farmer's market and I get my mushrooms, I usually will take it out of the bag, put it on a tray, turn them all upside down, and let them sit in the back patio. Why? Because then it can get more vitamin D. So then the mushrooms themselves are actually taking in that natural vitamin D from the sun, and then you eat that. So it's almost a circadian, I guess you almost call it like a little gem, a little tip, pearl. Whenever you go to the farmer's market and you get your own mushrooms, turn them upside down, put them in the sunlight for 10 to 15 minutes, and there you are getting more vitamin D into those mushrooms. So
at the right time,
you got it. So why is vitamin D important? Bones, your immune system, mental health, cardiovascular health, muscles, helps to support your metabolism. You'll see that this is very similar in scope to what I just told you about melatonin. Okay? Very similar in terms of what it can do. But interestingly enough, how your body uses vitamin D and all of the different ways it uses it is a little different when you get it from natural light and your body is using it from the conversion in the skin to when we get it in from supplementation. So there are different mechanisms as to how it's being carried and transported in the body when you get it from the sun versus when you take it in supplement form. Busy picture, but I like this picture because it's showing us how vitamin D is a hormone. Hormones are chemical messengers that go from different places, and their job is to exhibit all of these different tools, whether it was metabolism, immune system, mood and mental health regulation, neurotransmitters, etc. But when you take it in from the sun via UV light, so this is UVB light, middle of the day, it's using a different mechanism of action than when we take it in supplement form. There is also an interesting phenomenon with when you take it in supplement form, some people ask, can I overdose on vitamin D? Can I take too much? And it's true, you can. You can actually overdose. In clinical practice, I don't commonly see a lot of people who take too much vitamin D to the point where the levels are really high. But is there an increased risk of cardiovascular disease when the levels do get high? There is. And also kidney damage. Those are the most common things. I had a patient who bought one of those tinctures, and they thought that it was five droplets meant five like actual tinctures, like full levels. And so they were taking 5 of those a day, and of course the bottle ran out in like 15 days. They were like, wow, you didn't prescribe enough. And then you ask how somebody is taking it, and you're like, oh, okay, obviously that was way too much. Now, when you see that in the blood, I very rarely see it creates the damage to the heart or damage to the kidneys, but know that it's possible, right? So I like to think of it as like a Goldilocks nutrient or a Goldilocks hormone where too much is a problem, too little is a problem, but just right. There is such a thing as a sweet spot for it being just right. Here you can see in this diagram, it kind of shows us that too much vitamin D through the exogenous sources can create plaque in the walls of the arteries. So this is why we shouldn't just randomly take doses and not pay attention to how much and think about how much our body is getting in from the sun versus how much we're getting in through supplement form, because it's important to consider that there are risks to that. So vitamin D as a hormone. Now, in this picture, this is an example of all of the hormone effects that vitamin D has on the body. So it's not just a vitamin or a pill that you take, you're getting it from the sun, but you can see it has such a dynamic effect through all of these different mechanisms that are dedicated to different aspects of cellular health and your physiology. I did write in this article, this was back a couple of years ago, 2020, for CNET. And if you're interested in doing a deep dive on vitamin D, you're going to find more of this information here. Now, the interesting thing about this quote that we pulled is that you can see that even though there are foods that have vitamin D, we know that, I just showed you a list, for many people, it's not enough. And if we want the sweet spot, the Goldilocks amount of vitamin D, we typically need to go outside. And for some people, they're probably needing to go outside and they're supplementing. So when I ask, how often are you spending time outside? And there's crickets. And then I say, well, what about between the hours of 10 and 2? And there's more crickets. Then you know they're not getting that endogenous vitamin D. But the most dynamic effects on the body for the hormone regulation that vitamin D does is through sunlight, natural light on your skin, versus how we take it in pill form. Deanna Minnick wrote, when she presented this at Longevity Fest, she put up this slide, and you could see she was also one of the authors of this particular publication, where she shows the difference between vitamin D and melatonin. And she shows the difference because the question was, is melatonin the next vitamin D? Remember I said that melatonin is made not just from the brain at night, but it's also made in your cells during the day. And the near infrared light that you get from sunlight, all of your cells are actually also making melatonin. And you can see that there's so many similarities between the two. There are some key differences. You need light to make that natural melatonin, whereas here we need darkness to synthesize the melatonin. sorry, the vitamin D and the melatonin. But when you look at all of the different actions, the healing modalities, all of the things that these two specific hormones can do for your body, they're actually quite similar. And then another thing that she mentioned, which I thought was interesting, was while this is a small sample size for the study that was done, this was a study that was done, it looks like this was back in 2023, so not too far away, not long ago. The takeaway point, vitamin D levels are correlated with melatonin levels. We just said how similar they are, despite some being produced mainly in darkness. That doesn't mean that you're not getting melatonin during the day. We do need vitamin D from the natural light to be able to get that into our bodies naturally. But vitamin D levels being correlated with melatonin levels means that there could be this relationship between if somebody has too high levels or too low levels, and what do we often find as people get older? Their levels of vitamin D are really low. So many people. And that's not supplementation. So that's also something for us to think about, like, is there truly a tie between the two of them? There's also seasonality with the way that these hormones appear in our bodies. She also mentioned that vitamin D is really low in late winter. That makes sense. The sun's not out as much, right? And then melatonin is being low in spring because you typically need that darkness in order to make the melatonin from the brain as one aspect of the 5. And so lower melatonin levels were noted in individuals with autoimmune conditions like MS, lupus, systemic sclerosis, psoriasis. So we're making some of these associations between how dynamic and important these hormones are and what we're seeing in chronic diseases. So melatonin and vitamin D are circadian hormones, which brings us to a talk about circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythm is your body's 24-hour biological clock. It helps to regulate different processes like your sleep, your energy levels, your hormones, and your metabolism. And then I showed you earlier that there's that spot in the brain that's about the size of an almond that orchestrates all of the different clocks that happen throughout. And here's what it does. This is why it's important. Helps to support your sleep and your energy. It also helps to control your hormones. It also helps your metabolism and helps your cells repair. So this is just a very short list of why your circadian rhythm is important. This one is most important to me because whenever people talk about hormones, they always talk about what happens in the concept of the brain signaling down the adrenals, the brain signaling the thyroid gland, how the brain signals the ovaries. But where does the brain get the inputs? It's through sunlight, it's through day and night, it's through really having a great circadian rhythm. That's where the original inputs take place. And so even though we have lots of medications that help us with these feedback loops inside the body, you have to remind yourself that the original feedback to the brain to start the whole domino effect is actually coming from daylight and evening. This slide was taken from a 2024 article in Aging Medicine. And I've shown this before in one of the other lectures, but this is just an example of what happens throughout a 24-hour time period and when approximately is your body starting to create some of these things. You'll notice that you're experiencing the deepest sleep here, that your body temperature drops in the morning, that your body really does stop producing melatonin in the morning. And then over here, you can see that your body starts the secretion. Here it's saying at around 2100, but I would argue that as the sun starts to set, your body is already starting to get the signal and it's starting to prime to start creating some of that melatonin. And I read this book. I don't know how many of you have read The Circadian Code, but I thought it was an interesting book because there are hundreds of books that talk about the circadian rhythm. And here you can see that Dr. Sachin Panda mentions that it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. Circadian clock is more than a diet, it's a lifestyle. So now we're talking about diet. Now we're diving even deeper. Put a pin in that for a second. I like this graph because it's showing us that across the lifespan, there are lots of different changes in your body's circadian rhythm. And we often see melatonin and cortisol as opposites, and you can see that between the light blue and also the cortisol levels here. And babies aren't born with a circadian rhythm. You actually have to train them over the course of the first 6 months. It was tough. My son is 7 months. It was tough, but we reinforced all of these principles to make sure that we could also train his circadian rhythm. Now, you can see here adolescence and adulthood. Look at the changes that you typically see. Remember that the light blue is melatonin, and then here, this is cortisol. So as you're getting ready to go to sleep, your body was meant to sleep and create higher amounts of melatonin. And then as you wake up, your body is meant to be alert. Your cortisol levels are meant to be at their highest point. And as you exert your energy throughout the day, the cortisol levels tend to tip off. Some people, even here at Love.Life, they're curious about these levels and if their body is actually doing just that. And you can test it. The best way right now to test that is to do it via saliva samples. There's no perfect way to test, but you can test via saliva samples. And with those samples throughout the day, they'll have you do these small little tubes, and you can actually see somebody's melatonin and cortisol pathways. So that is a specialty test that we will offer. And then look down here. Melatonin and cortisol levels and how much your body can create. We talked about that earlier. Melatonin decreases as you age. So there is a tie between that pineal gland, the brain making the melatonin. As you get older, your ability to create it goes down. So if the brain isn't able to make as much, we should start utilizing all of the other ways that you can get it in. Whether this is dietary sources, whether this is outdoor natural sunlight for at least 30 minutes or even more throughout the day so you can get that UVB and get it on your skin to create it endogenously. And some people are even using different red light technology. So photobiomodulation allows for that as well. It's the near infrared light, which even in our sunlight and saunas, we have that, right? So you're actually getting that natural melatonin production as well. And if you're wanting to dive more into your circadian rhythm, this was an article I did last year for Timeline, and it digs deeper. And it also has a few interesting tips to help you learn more. So chronobiology, this is the study of biological rhythms and living organisms and how these rhythms are influenced by environmental cues. Whenever people talk about chronobiology and chrononutrition, they're talking about how we live in relationship to our environment, which is the light and dark cycles. I love the concept of chrononutrition. This is this concept of how timing how you eat and scheduling how you eat can influence your body's metabolism and overall health. It's really simple. So the ideal concept behind chrononutrition is we eat during the day and we're fasted at night. Really simple. Which means that a majority of our energy and our calories that we're taking in as food sources happens when the sun is out. And that during nighttime, your body is in more of a rested state. It's trying to start produce that melatonin. And so if you eat meals that are super heavy late at night, you're diverting your body's attention to digestion instead of helping it relax and prepare for night. Makes sense, right? So I stopped eating all those meals super late because I think it's important for us to align our bodies. And again, everybody has their own opinion, but when you align with these ideals, your metabolism improves, your immune system is strong and resilient, your adrenal glands are working much better. You just notice that you feel better once you start to adopt a few of these things. This was a slide that was also presented by Dr. Minnick, and she talks about just some brief examples of how we can live to support our lifestyle in a better way to align with our circadian rhythm. And here she mentions keeping nights dark and days bright. Super simple. During the daylight, you want to get outside as much as we can, and at night, the artificial light is killing us. That's probably one of the bigger things, the light pollution that we're all experiencing. And I love the concept of eating in season because this also brings in the fact that food that's grown here seasonally has its own light code for how our body was meant to get that food in. And so when you think about going to the farmer's market and you're supporting the local California farmers, that's also food that was grown in this geographic location under this same light that your body was meant to take in. I love that. And so, is there such thing as a sunlight deficiency? I think the numbers are striking when you hear 88 to 90% of people are indoors too much. That means that a majority of people are spending time indoors, not with natural light. And what we get from this is never going to be the same as what we get from going outside. You ever notice how sometimes when people turn on the lights inside your house and you're there for a little bit, but when you step outside, it feels different? It feels different because the light is different. And the natural light that we get from being outdoors is crucial. Interestingly enough, we also know that sunlight has the near infrared light. We also know it has the infrared and red spectrum, specifically in the sunrise and sunset. So those are the best times to go outside if you're really trying to hone in on that. And then, of course, you also have different recovery modalities at Love.Life to help get you that infrared light that you're also looking for. And so do we have a darkness deficiency? Unfortunately, in this day and age, the artificial light is crazy for all of us at night. It's not as detrimental during the day when your body was trying to produce the cortisol to continue to help throughout the day. But at night, this is a huge problem. Even living in Los Angeles, you probably can go outside and it's never as dark as you think it should be. But when you probably go to like the forest or you're on a camping trip and it's pitch black and pitch dark, it feels different. The air is different. The energy is different. Your body feels different. And so we are really struggling with getting true darkness these days. When I read in Sachin Panda's book, The Circadian Code, that artificial light at night was increasing the risk of breast cancer, that was it for me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. I need to dig deeper. How come no one's talking about this? And it's true that the National Institute of Health has actually designated artificial light at night as a carcinogen. And most people don't talk about it, and they don't know about it, but it's true. Feel free to look that up. Which means that all of the artificial light that we get on an everyday basis at night, once you kind of compound and you put it all together, whether it's your phone screen or the TVs or your laptop or the overhead lights, we should probably be doing a better job of thinking about the effects that that light has on our circadian rhythm. Remember, this is artificial light at night. Dr. Martin Moore-Eid, he is an interesting fellow. He also, him and his team, his research team, he was the one whose team founded that area of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus that is the master operator of your circadian rhythm and your clock system throughout your body. And he originally wrote the book, The Light Doctor, where he released it on Substack about like a chapter at a time. And so that's the way I read it. I didn't read the whole book like this. I read it via Substack because he was releasing a chapter at a time. But every single chapter, you were hungry for more. So I thought it was clever to be able to release a book that way. And in it, he also identifies that probably one of the biggest carcinogens for cancer patients is that artificial light at night. The light we see is as important to our health as the air we breathe, the food that we eat, and the water we drink. What's exciting is that at Love.Life, Dr. Bruce is actually going to go into this a little bit more. Some of you might be attending that. That book event is coming up in a few weeks. And so we're going to dive even deeper into sleep and how you drink and how you breathe. And this was from Love.Life recently. Sleep is free therapy. We talked about mental health. We talked about how melatonin can help to support your mood. Sleep is like free filler. Does it support your skin? Does it support metabolism? Sleep is a free personal trainer. Does it help that metabolism? We know it does. So there was a reason for this, right? Like, even though these are small little snippets, they're relatable snippets, but we know that sleep helps your body detoxify. We know that it helps to support your endurance and energy throughout the day. We do know that it helps to support cellular health, and we know that it helps to support mood. And recently, we also put out a sleep guide with a few gems and pearls and tips from our team. And so you're welcome to download the sleep protocol if you didn't get the email about that. This is Dr. Bruce, and this is the event that we have coming up. I'm excited to interview him. So if you have thoughts and you have questions, and as you're reading the book, or maybe you've done a little research and you want to ask something, let me know, because I'm already starting to curate a clever list of some questions that I'm looking forward to him addressing. So some not so common reasons why sleep can be so disruptive. It would have been easy to put the easy, common reasons that I think many of you know, but I put this list together because I think these are ones that we need to make sure that we think about. Your body doesn't look as stress or fear or anger or excitement as each of those unique things. All it thinks is rise cortisol, rise adrenaline. Whether you're stressed out or you're excited, the body doesn't know the difference. It just feels a rise in the cortisol. And so that can cause you to have problems with sleep. Some people, they really struggle with their timing of when they work out, because evening workouts that are super intense can really cause sleep disruption. My husband does that. Sometimes it's like with our 7-month-old, there's not a whole lot of time to get in that workout, but if he does an intense workout at night, I'm the one that's going to sleep with Koa and he's still up. So it can cause you to stay a little bit more alert and awake rather than getting ready to sleep. Poor blood sugar regulation, this is one we commonly see. Interestingly enough, it's not about the blood sugar levels being too high. Some people, we're not worried about diabetes or even pre-diabetes. For some people, I'm worried about the levels dropping too low. And when they drop too low, that also can raise up cortisol. And as it raises up cortisol, your melatonin levels go down and your body wakes up. We use a continuous glucose monitor to help us understand that for people who are struggling with that. Nervous system overdrive kind of fits the bill over here as well. News, TV, stimulating books. I love a good book. I'm a bookworm, I love reading. However, if I am reading for enjoyment versus reading something that's super stimulating at night, not cool, because then I'll end up staying up until 11, 12 reading when my body was actually trying to calm itself down. So we also have to pay attention to what you're exposed to, what kind of information that you're bringing in. And then you'll commonly see things about temperature neutrality. In Jeff Krasno's book, The Good Stress book, he talks about this. We know that the temperature being at this ambient, constant rate in our homes also is creating an issue with sleep. Our body does like the low temperatures in our rooms for sleep. So here's examples of what I like. A warm bath with a couple cups of Epsom salt, keeping the bedroom like a cave. We don't have regular bulbs in the rooms. We have red light bulbs. Cooling sheets. I think I mentioned in one of the other ones that we use grounding mats. So my bed is grounded. We have also that cord that goes out to the patio into the earth. So we're getting electrons that way. Weighted blankets, some people really love that. A 10 to 15 pound weighted blanket can also just relax the body even more. Charge devices outside your room. Many people are really guilty of that one. I used to do this all the time. And then I realized I felt so much better once I charged it outside and it wasn't the first thing I looked at when I woke up. Because right when you wake up, and if this is the first thing you look at, what do you see? Alerts, emails, text messages. And does that really need to be the first thing that I see at 6:30 in the morning? No. Massage, blackout curtains, tea, journaling, just some examples to help build a sleep sanctuary. And this brings us to longevity lessons number 8 and number 9, gut health, metabolism, and the microbiome, the science of breath. This Tuesday, I'm speaking at SoCal Wellness. So I'm speaking on a topic, I think, biohacking and longevity with a couple really great speakers. This event is held at Skirball Cultural Center. Welcome to join us. There's probably going to be about 600 people attending this one, if not more. Yeah. And then, thank you for those of you that sent me emails. I put a lot of energy into longevity lessons, and I'm very grateful to hear from you. So if you like what we're doing and what we're creating, please send me a message, let me know. If you have honest feedback on ways that we should make this better. This was our first go, the very first ones that we started doing as of January and February of this year. So there's always room to reiterate. When I do another longevity lessons in the fall, we're talking 2.0, which means bring in the cases, bring in my patients, bring in the data. Let's learn from all the patients that we see here at Love.Life. Let's also take a look at some of the specialty testing that we do, because some of you might be curious. Maybe somebody wants to know what a gut microbiome test is and what kind of information that you can get from it, and whether or not a gut healing protocol can be beneficial. The next series in April, Dr. Anna's doing that one, so that's the 4-week series. More on fitness and recovery, and also the different modalities, and packing in a lot of the science behind those. And this is where you can find me, and also where you can find Love.Life. And that is all I have for you today.